It's Chris here. I want to do a video for National Coming Out Day, and this is the day before that I'm filming it right now, and this is the only place I could film, which, because the roof was locked for whatever reason, and I think I'm kind of worried that people can hear me in the room next to me, because like I'm basically right next to the workout room. Like, this is the weirdest place that I could find to film, but yeah. We're going to see how awkward I'm going to be, how many times I'm going to awkwardly look to my left right now. Alright, so essentially I want to do a video where I don't really have a script for this. I'm going to be talking about coming out narratives, or recommending books and movies with coming out narratives. The reason why I decided to add in movies was, there's like this big argument on if we need coming out narratives and stories, and absolutely, there's so many reasons why we need coming out narratives in books still. Like, I think it's extremely important. I'm going to actually link George Lester's video where he called it like In Defense of the Coming Out Story or something. I'm going to put a link to that one down below. I'm also going to put a link to Perpetual Page's video on her Simon versus Homo Sapiens Agenda review, where she talks about the coming out narrative and how we need more than that. I absolutely agree that we need more than that. We need more than just the coming out narrative and queer fiction, but I think we still absolutely have a need for coming out narratives. Especially because I went on my shelf, my LGBTQ bookshelf, and was like, let me look to figure out what books I would recommend to have a coming out narrative, and I could only find 2 really on the entire shelf. Like, a lot of the books on my LGBTQ shelf, which is an entire shelf with some overflow, are books that deal with other issues besides just coming out, I felt like. So I felt like, yeah, so I only have 2 actual fiction books from my shelf that I'm going to be showing you, and I'm also going to be showing you all some nonfiction books that I feel like could help people in their coming out process on here. And then I went ahead and said I'm going to add in some movies that I feel like have really interesting coming out narratives, because I love queer films too, so I had to go and throw some of those in here. I don't really have an order for this. I don't really have a plan for this, to be honest. We're just going to go into it, and yeah. Start with some of those nonfictions. First one being this book, It's Gay, by Juno Dawson. This is a really witty and humorous book that is just basically like advice for queer people, advice for allies, even, I think, a little bit. It talks about sex, it talks about porn, it talks about coming out, it talks about everything in a very cool, kind of witty way, and it's awesome, and it's a hella rainbow, which is great. I love this book. I have to bring up Out on Fraternity Row. I don't talk about my nonfiction books on my shelf a lot, but this is a book about, it's basically personal accounts of being gay in college fraternities. So it's a bunch of men who came out or were gay in college, some of them who weren't out while they were in college, some of them coming out during their college experiences, and it going bad, sometimes it goes okay. It's very varying situations, because it's really kind of encompasses the last like 50 years, I feel like. So yeah, this was a really, really good book. I actually got this book when I was pledging my fraternity, which my experience is completely different than anyone in this book, obviously, but like, yeah, it was cool reading this at that time. So yeah, I wanted to go ahead and throw this one out there. And last one, but probably my favorite of the 3, Recognize the Voices of Bisexual Men. It's an anthology created by Robin Oakes and H. Sharif Williams. And it is just a bunch of accounts of different types of stories from bisexual men, of color, there's trans men, and just people who are bisexual, and it's brilliant. And it's just like, there's so many great stories in here that I read. Some of them are completely about the coming out experience. Some people talking about biphobia, some people talking about other different experiences that these bisexual men have had. Really, really good book. Highly, highly recommend it. One more nonfiction book that I want to mention is called Beyond Magenta, Transgender Teens Speak Out. I didn't read a lot of books about trans experiences in coming out, but I feel like this is just a great little collection of a bunch of different trans teenagers and their experiences, realizing that they were trans, their experiences trying to come out to their family and their friends, and just like, it's very different experiences from each person, and I thought this was just such a great collection. I hope y'all do check out some of the nonfiction books that I just recommended. I feel like nonfiction books are very helpful for queer people before their coming out process, because you're reading actual experiences from people, or you're getting advice hardcore advice from someone who's already gone through the process of coming out. And so that's why I really like nonfiction books for this situation. Part of the reason why I think coming out narrative is so important because there's so many different types of coming out, and I feel like these next few things are going to be fiction stories that show coming out in very varying ways, like very different ways. So that's why I want to recommend all of them. And so we're just going to jump right into it. First one off is going to be Beautiful Thing. I'm not going to talk about this movie that much, but there is a big coming out scene in this book between one of the two gay teenagers and their parent, and it's really kind of expanded over a period of time, and I feel like you can definitely understand the difficulties of that, what they're going through. This is also just one of my favorite films ever. It's just so romantic and sweet, and it also has a lot of angst and just everything that I want in a queer film it had, and it's like from the 90s. So like I really love this film, so I had to go ahead and mention it really fast. And it definitely has a different coming out than what the coming outs in the books and movies I'm going to mention for you right now. Right now I feel like I'm just going to jump over to a movie that links to a book right now, and I'm going to talk about The Way He Looks. The Way He Looks is a movie about a blind teenager who meets this new guy at school. They start working on a project together, and he starts to realize he may have feelings for this guy.
Esse menino novo é muito fofo. Ai, quem sabe ele não é meu príncipe encantado.
Tchau, Léo. Tchau, Gabriel. Você sempre foi assim, Léo? Sempre. Então quer dizer que você nunca viu o rosto da Giovanna.
What I really think I like about this book when it comes to coming out narrative is that this film was based off of a short, and I feel like the major coming out in this film is between the main character Leo and his best friend Giovanna, I think is her name. And it's very different in the short than it is in the actual film, and I really liked that switch because like it had to be expanded on more this coming out than what they were allowed to put in that little short film, and I think I really loved what they did with it. And also it's one of those films where it's just like usually you see the coming out being more centered on the coming out to the parents, and I feel like his coming out to his friend was a very major deal for Leo, and so I liked that element of the film. Talking about coming out to a friend, we're going to hop over to a book really fast. Last Scene Leaving by Caleb Roerick. I know I just read this, I just reviewed it, but I think in my review I mentioned that his coming out narrative was a little bit more like my own in ways. I feel like the main character Flynn comes out to his parents, he comes out to his friends, and it's not the experience that you normally see in these type of coming out narratives. I feel like his coming out was not the best coming out. He came out in a situation where he felt like he had to, which is kind of how I came out to my mother. I was kind of angry, I was upset, it was something that just kind of came out, and I feel like that was very realistic. People don't always get to come out in the best way, and I like that this story shows someone coming out in not the best way, because it's not always rainbows and sunshine. Sometimes it's more difficult, but it still also has a very hopeful tone when it comes to his coming out element, which is only a small element of the story that really focuses more on the thriller that Flynn's ex-girlfriend's gone missing and we're trying to figure out what's happening with her. And the coming out really is only a smaller element of it, but I really liked the way that it was done. Like, it stood out to me while reading this book, and I really liked that a lot. Next up, we have the movie Edge of 17, which I feel like is an iconic queer film, and I feel like part of the reason it was iconic is because of its coming out scenes, mainly the coming out scene between the main character and his mother, which is kind of one that it has been parodied before. Like, I've seen parodies of this coming out scene. I've seen all different types of things coming around this coming out scene because it's just one of those kind of iconic coming out scenes in queer film. And there's no way I couldn't put this on this list because I just remember the first time watching that and how emotional it made me watching that coming out scene. And also the characters coming out to some of his friends don't go necessarily as well. His friend.
Why did you ever kiss me?
I'm sorry, Maggie.
I just don't want people getting the wrong idea.
What idea?
People think you're gay.
Is that what you want to know?
Your whole life, people have said to you, you're gonna find the perfect girl, and you're different.
Also shows a queer character finding people who do accept them, like finding your queer family, I feel like, which is something that's also extremely important to have in these kind of narratives, because that's kind of what allowed me to kind of get through things. When I started college, I joined the Pride Alliance, and I had this like new family of queer people who I could be comfortable being myself with, and that really was important. And I feel like Edge of 17 really shows that aspect of kind of queer life and coming out, especially at this character's age around like 16 or 17, being able to find that is just really wonderful. So I had to go and throw that in here. And while we're on that, we might as well go ahead and stop off at the last film, which also has a character from that film in it. Years later, is Shelter, which I talk about way too much on this channel. The last book is a book that I talk about way too much on this channel too. The movie is about a guy named Zach who is taking care of his sister and her son. He's working some dead-end jobs to do it. He's put his own goals on pause until he meets this guy named Sean, and he starts to not only figure out his sexuality and come into his own and gain some self-acceptance of himself, but also decide that he needs to start living for himself. He needs to start pursuing his dreams that he put off for his sister and her son. And I really love this film. Like, I can't talk about how much I love this film. I could talk about it for like ever.
Why didn't you tell me? Have you always known?
Just don't know if this is really what I want. Seems like what you want.
You love him?
I mentioned Edge of 17 having some iconic coming outs. This movie has one of those characters that's a part of one of these iconic coming outs in it. They played his sister, and I feel like that was just giving me like some other feels on top of feels type of thing going on. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why, like, as a coming out narrative, I thought this one was just something that stood out. But also, Zach's coming out to his girlfriend of many years. Great scene. Tori is fantastic. I love that scene so freaking much. And also his coming out to his best friend, who is also his new love interest's brother. So yeah, that. I don't know if that sounded confusing or not. Hopefully it didn't. But yeah, it's just a really good film with some really interesting coming out narratives, and I really like that a lot. So I had to go ahead and throw that on this list. As for the last book, I feel like I've already mentioned it because I did when I mentioned Perpetual Pages' video, which is talking about the coming out narrative, and also it's a review of this book, Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I feel like this book I had to have this on this list because I read it last year. I was absolutely amazed by it, and it really talks about coming out in a different way. It's a book that talks about coming out and also is a commentary on the convention of coming out. It's essentially Simon is being blackmailed by this guy named Martin, I believe, because Martin finds out about his sexuality and because of Simon's emails to this guy named Blue. This is a beautiful love story between Simon and Blue. You see two people falling in love only through email correspondence, and it's absolutely beautiful. And then you also see Simon, who is frustrated, he's angry because he's being blackmailed and he's having his sexuality lorded over him. But then you also see these amazing coming out moments between Simon and friends, Simon and his family in this book that's just really beautiful and well done. And also I really like the commentary on coming out, and like the idea of, like, I feel like my favorite quotes from this book is talking about like, why does straight have to be the default, why does white have to be the default, is a conversation that Simon has in this book with someone, and I really loved that commentary. I remember reading that and just being like, yes, I agree with you 100%, and I really like that a lot. I feel like this video is getting pretty long, but this is just an amazing book that more people should definitely try out and definitely go read. I think Becky Abitali just does an absolutely amazing job with this book, and so I definitely had to go and to mention it to everyone. I'm going to put a link down to, like I said, Perpetual Pages of video, but I'm also going to put a link down to my review if you wanted to go and check that out, because I know I did a review of this one, and you guys should definitely go and check all the videos out that I just linked, because I think they're just all great videos talking about coming out narratives and coming out stories. So go and check those out for sure. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope everyone's having a great coming out day. If you're coming out, if you're already out, or whatever, I hope you're still having just a great day. And if you aren't subscribed to my channel, I talk about books, movies, and music, often queer, sometimes not queer, but I'm interested in a lot of queer content, so that's what I normally talk about. And yeah, if you like this video, you should totally give it a like down there and share it with people. That'd be really great. And I hope you all are having a wonderful day. And I will see you all next time. Bye.